You're listening to the Health and Happiness Podcast with Travis Kemper and
Lauren Maxwell. Each episode, we share easy to implement strategies to improve your health, happiness, and overall quality of life.
Silence isn't empty. It's full of answers. Unknown. How's it going, Travis?
Good. We went camping Saturday night. We were at 10,000 feet at Meadow Creek Lake. It was gorgeous. Duke went absolutely insane first thing in the morning yesterday. He just sprinted all out for no reason, but he got to play in snow because there's still like anywhere from 3 to 5 feet hanging out at 10,000 feet in the pines where they get nice and shady. And he played in creeks, he played in snow. It was good.
That sounds so fun.
Yeah, it was nice and cool. It was like 58 degrees when we left yesterday at 1 o'clock.
Wow.
We got back here and it was 80. Yeah, 4,000 feet of elevation. I'll do that. We're leaving for my brother's wedding on Thursday, so I'm excited to see the family and be part of the wedding.
Yay! Congratulations, Joe.
How's it going, Lauren?
It's going great. I got to go dancing with a friend this weekend, which was super fun. I haven't been dancing, I don't know, feels like a long time. So we got to put our show her off skills to good use. And we even got some compliments from other dancers, which is always like really exciting. Especially when you're like watching people who have been dancing for years and we're like, this is our, 10th, 11th time dancing? Our second time dancing outside of our living room. Yeah, so it was really fun. Except for then I spent 6.5 hours in a car trying to get home, which was supposed to be a 2-hour drive. So that was less than ideal. But I also this weekend got to learn a new song. So I picked back up my cello and learned a song that I heard on the radio and like fell in love with because it was sad and beautiful. And Nolan learned it on guitar and then I sang it and it was super therapeutic. And I love when music feels like therapy. It's wonderful. So that was super fun.
Good job.
Yeah, thanks. So what are we going to talk about today, Travis?
Silence, its benefits, and possible reasons we don't embrace it more.
Yeah, so one of the reasons we don't embrace it more probably is because people are actually afraid of being alone with their thoughts. These studies that we're going to talk about are wild. Super interesting, but wild. So in 11 studies, it was found that participants typically did not enjoy spending 6 to 15 minutes in a room by themselves with nothing to do but think. 6 to 15 minutes. And that they enjoyed doing mundane external activities much more, and that many preferred to administer electric shocks to themselves instead of being left alone with their thoughts for 15 minutes. Most people seem to prefer to be doing something rather than nothing, even if that something is negative. So yeah, people would rather stick their finger in an electric socket than sit quietly and think. Or rather, at least men would. 67% of the male participants in one study gave themselves at least one shock during the thinking period. And on average, the study participants who elected to self-zap gave themselves 1.47 shocks in a 15-minute interval, although there was one outlier who gave himself 190 shocks in 15 minutes. Oh my gosh! Interestingly, women were far less likely to shock themselves. Well, I guess I don't know. I think maybe women are just more afraid of the shock in general, so they're like, I don't know.
Or they're less afraid of thinking.
Maybe. I don't know that
silence.
That's true for me, but they only shocked themselves like 25% of the time.
Yeah, which means that the majority of the men were over 2 shocks.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. So why is it so difficult to sit alone in silence? The authors of this study thought perhaps when we are left alone with our thoughts, participants focused on their own shortcomings and got caught in ruminative thought cycles.
I would agree with that. I think it is really hard to sit alone in silence. In my experience, it is kind of terrifying. My brain is really good at doing ruminative thought cycles, and I tend to just like think about all of the things that could go better or that I'm doing wrong, and really just focus a lot on that. And when I don't have music or like some kind of stimuli to distract me, my brain's just like, here's all the reasons you're failing. Super fun and helpful.
It sounds like it. Side note, rumination is one of my favorite words ever. Not for any real reason, just I like the way it sounds.
Yeah.
And I do not have these negative thoughts build up when I'm in silence. One of the reasons that I love being in the woods in pretty much any respect is because of the silence and the benefits that I get from it. So yeah, I don't think I would shock myself.
I don't know that I would shock myself either. I mean, I've sat alone in silence enough that like for sure there's benefits, and if you're like reining your thoughts in better and learning to control your mind better, then it's actually really helpful. It's when I like am not in a good place to do that that it is not helpful. Maybe then I would take a shock.
Another possibility that the authors suggest for why it's so difficult for us to sit alone in silence is that thinking is just too complicated, which that's my favorite insult to people from the authors. Like, hey, you're just too dumb to think.
It's just too hard. It's too hard.
It's too hard for you. You're better off not doing it.
Yeah.
However, questioning participants after the experiments revealed that neither of these explanations held much water. The reason we hate sitting and thinking, despite our fond hopes to the contrary, remains a mystery. Research has shown that minds are difficult to control, and it may be particularly hard to steer our thoughts in pleasant directions and keep them there. This may be why many people seek to gain better control of their thoughts with meditation and other techniques with clear benefits. Without such training, people prefer doing to thinking. Even if what they are doing is so unpleasant that they would normally pay to avoid it, the untutored mind does not like to be alone with itself. I think Duke has some problems with silence. Yeah. So he's a little barky.
So, when can solitude be beneficial? Solitude can be beneficial to you when certain preconditions are met. Kenneth Rubin, who is a developmental psychologist, calls them the ifs. So, if it is voluntary, if one can regulate one's emotions effectively, I think that is the key. If you are not regulating your emotions, you can end up with ruminative thoughts. If one can join a social group when desired, so like if you can come out of silence and like talk to other people, and if one can maintain positive relationships outside of it. When such conditions aren't met, yes, solitude can be harmful.
Yeah, isolation's really bad, so that makes sense.
Yeah.
Benefits of silence. Why is silence so important? Scientists have been surprised to find that silence is a key factor in creating a healing environment for your brain. Here's some of the ways that silence boosts your brain's superpowers. Silence gives your brain a break. Most of the brain's energy is put towards automatic functions, such as maintaining awareness of our surroundings and developing cognitive associations. Comparatively, little brain energy is put towards complex tasks, such as advanced arithmetic. Meditating in a still, silent place allows the brain to optimally conserve its energy. In this period of mental relaxation, the brain can allocate energy towards house cleaning activities, which are essential for the preservation of existing neurons.
Yep, and we'll talk about that, I feel like, a little bit more with some neuroplasticity stuff. But silence also allows you to tap into your brain's default mode. So scientific studies have revealed distinct modes of the brain, one of them being the default mode network. The default mode is activated when we are at silent rest, ideally with eyes closed. During this state, the body supplies more blood to the frontal lobes, which is generally interpreted as increased brain activity in that region. The default mode is also associated with increased introspection, a notable benefit in the practice of mindfulness. It is in this mode that the brain does the work of helping us set new skills into muscle memory, digesting new academic concepts, or absorbing therapeutic work. The default mode of the brain is observed most closely during the psychological task of reflecting on one's personalities and characteristics, like self-reflection, rather than during self-recognition, thinking of the self-concept or thinking about self-esteem, for example.
So silence supports neuroplasticity, which is changing the brain. There have been stunning case studies in which patients who experience chronic neural pain or degenerative diseases like Parkinson's tap into the power of their own neural networks to develop compensatory mechanisms to relieve their symptoms. Research shows that mindfulness facilitates the brain's organization, giving it space to effectively heal itself. So we don't like to go over mice studies very much, but one consistently gets brought up in all the studies of silence. So there was a 2013 study on mice. They used different types of noise and silence and monitored the effect the sound and silence had on the brains of mice. The silence was intended to be the control in the study, but what they found was surprising. The scientists discovered that when the mice were exposed to 2 hours of silence per day, they developed new cells in the hippocampus. The hippocampus is the region of the brain associated with memory, emotion, and learning.
It's really cool. I love how they were like going into it thinking that silence was the control, and then they were like, oh, wait a minute.
I love how they admitted that their hypothesis was completely wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
Because that's a problem in science.
For sure.
Yeah, like you have to have that integrity to be like, I was wrong, and this is kind of exciting. Yeah. And that's what they did. So good job really on the authors.
Yeah. Silence allows you to truly self-reflect. Being silent with ourselves gives way to noticing subtle signs within our bodies, breathing patterns, digestive noises, and any musculoskeletal imbalances. Silent meditation is a valuable time to take internal inventory. In the practice of mindfulness, greater self-insight can be found by embracing silence and simplicity. Silence also gives space to process repressed thoughts and emotions. I think maybe this is why I have a hard time with it, is things that I'm trying to shut out, like to come in. One of the intimidating factors of silence is it takes away the coping mechanisms for suppressing painful thoughts and emotions. By filling our lives with distractions, we're able to evade processing deep trauma. Suppressing thoughts and emotions long-term keeps the brain in an elevated level of stress and prevents its systems from working properly.
Lauren.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I am very aware that I am a highly stressed individual, and it's self-inflicted because I'm avoiding things.
As long as you're aware.
Yeah,
acceptance is the first step, I think.
Yeah. I think I've done better at working to deal with my inner demons more throughout the last couple years. However, when we don't consciously process trauma or negative thoughts, they tend to emerge in self-destructive habits. Doing the hard work of sitting in silence and allowing latent thoughts and emotions to come to the surface is temporary pain in service of long-term. I do think I just had an epiphany. I think that part of the reason that I couldn't sleep, like just spent like so long not being able to sleep, is because that was me like sitting in silence, and then like all of these thoughts came up and I was like, I don't want to deal with them, and so it became really overwhelming. But the last year of working on controlling my mind and adding in like meditation and stuff, that allows me to have more control of my thoughts and be more comfortable sitting in silence, and then I can fall asleep because I'm not stressing myself out trying to shut out all of the stuff I don't want to think about.
Nice job.
Yeah, wow,
I'm
cool.
I'm proud of you. Silence boosts creativity. I definitely noticed this one.
Mm-hmm.
The brain in a silent environment can be likened to a blank slate. In a distraction-free space, we are able to notice every idea that appears in our mind's eye. Silence, even boredom, puts us into a seeking state, forcing us to control what is most fulfilling for us to work on. This is why I like the woods so much, because I come out with ideas. I'm like, why didn't I think of that before?
Yeah.
And then like that's where this came. That's why this podcast is here, because of the camping trip.
Cool.
Yeah. So
that's perfect.
I was like, that would be fun to do. Oh, and who should I do it with? Because I don't want to do it by myself. I was like, Lauren would be the perfect person, because I'm kind of like rough and gruff, and Lauren is like a little more gentle, but has the same. But you like we see eye to eye on things, and we both believe in this stuff. But you're more gentle, so you give messages in a different way than I give them.
Yeah, I think we make a good team. We have a lot of things that balance us out.
Yes, agreed. Silence helps to reduce stress. It has been found that noise can have a pronounced physical effect on our brains, resulting in elevated levels of stress hormones. If you live in a consistently noisy environment, you are likely to experience chronically elevated levels of stress hormones. A study that was published in 2002 examined the effects that the relocation of Munich's airport had on children's health and cognition. Children who are exposed to noise develop a stress response that causes them to ignore the noise. What is of interest is that the children in this study not only ignored harmful stimuli, they also ignored stimuli that they should be paying attention to, such as speech. This is quite fascinating. For one, this basically says that kids that live in noisy environments are going to do worse in school.
Yeah, that's exactly what I concluded from it.
Which they do in general. Also, I'm going to continue living in my quiet rural areas.
Yeah, that seems a lot better for a lot of reasons.
Yeah, well, I know intuitively for me that it works way better. I don't like cities. I don't even like them for a night.
Yeah.
But it looks like the research supports that it's better for my brain.
Yes.
So.
Yep. I think we'll both continue to be living in areas like we are living in. Silence also improves cognitive abilities. So according to the attention restoration theory, when you are in an environment with lower levels of sensory input, the brain can recover some of its cognitive abilities that may be sacrificed if you live in a noisy environment. So this kind of goes along with exactly what Travis was saying. In silence, the brain is able to let down its sensory guard and restore some of what has been lost through excess noise.
More benefits. Silence may help your health in several ways, including lowering your blood pressure, improving concentration and focus, calming racing thoughts, stimulating brain growth, reducing cortisol levels, stimulating creativity, improving insomnia. Practicing quiet at times throughout the day may set you up for a better rest at night, and encouraging mindfulness.
Yeah, so how do we get more silence in our life? Well, it's definitely with intention. So make your vehicle a noise-free zone. So a great way to start is like if you have a commute to work, even if it's like 5 minutes of a commute. This one's really hard for me because I love music. But like take some time where you're not listening to music or not listening to your podcast and use that as your like silence time.
She doesn't mean not listening to our podcast. She means not listening to the other ones.
Right, exactly. Definitely listen to our podcast.
Of course.
Reduce background noise during household tasks. So like turn off the TV, turn off your music. Wow, this is really just like me trying to tell myself to turn off my music because I have music like 90% of the time.
But there are benefits to music, so I think you're supposed to do some
music,
on, some off.
Some on, some off. That's the key.
Yeah. You're not trying to go 20.
Off.
Yeah, you're not trying to do 24 hours of silence.
I think I would drive myself insane.
You might need to do 24 hours of silence one day.
I don't know. There was one time I tried to challenge myself with doing a workout in complete silence, like no music, nothing, and I was like, that was when I realized I do not like being alone with my thoughts, especially in a workout environment, because I was so mean to myself. And I was like, oh man, Lauren, you got to work on your negative self-talk. Another tip would be to remove your earbuds. So again, like, reduce the background noise, reduce the noise. Start your day before the rest of the house wakes up so you can have some alone time. And start with small incremental changes. So begin with literally like 2 minutes of silence and then go from there.
Yeah, I think that's always our recommendation is if you're going to start, you don't start like, I'm going to do 150 push-ups today. You don't start with 24 hours of silence. You set aside a brief time period and you just make yourself do it. And then you gradually increase it. So our challenge this week is to try and intentionally embrace silence, even if just for a few minutes.
Love it.
Lauren, you did a great job today.
You did a great job, Travis. This was fun.
This was fun. Thank you again, everybody, for listening. If you have not yet, please leave us a review. They really do help us reach more people, and we would appreciate it. And yeah, that's it. We'll see you next time.
We'll see you next time. Bye.
Thank you for taking the time out of your busy day to listen to this episode of the Health and Happiness Podcast. We hope you enjoyed the episode and are getting benefits from our content.
If your life is improving in part due to the information in this podcast, we would greatly appreciate you sharing the episode with your family and friends on social media and leaving us a review so we can continue to reach more people and improve the health and happiness of the community at large.
Thanks again, and we will see you next week for another episode of the Health and Happiness Podcast.